Hello and welcome to another video. This is one of my classes to benefit Eve University. I'm Amoni Panala. You might know me as Zipporah Panala or Camille Panala, depending on when you met me in Eve University. But if you don't know me, hello. I'm a teacher, FC mentor. There's pretty much nothing I will do or nothing I will not do for Eve University to try and help further people learning how to play the game. Um, so, let's talk about today's class. So today we're talking about living in wormhole space, and this class assumes that you already know some things about wormhole space and assumes that you know some things about exploration and descan and all that other stuff. So if you're not familiar with those things, I have class videos on uh, called Intro to Exploration, Intro to Descan, um, all that good stuff. You can find those videos on my channel if you want to review that information and then come back to this video, or if you just want to watch it and then watch the videos on the subjects that you don't fully understand. Either way is fine, but this video and this class is going to assume that you know something about wormhole space and about exploration. So we're going to dive into it here. Um, so, as per usual, if you have questions, you can leave them as a comment in this video. I will say that this video, I may update it um, as this is a uh, class that is very much in review. It is brand new. I just like a week ago designed this class and taught it for the first time, got some good feedback from folks, and so I may eventually uh, update this video to reflect new information or changes in what's covered in this class. Um, but we're going to cover this, and any questions that come up, feel free to leave them as a comment. I will try to answer them as soon as I can. Can't promise to get to all of them, but I'll do my best. So, there are a couple of different ways to live in wormhole space, and I'm mostly going to focus on living in wormhole space as a part of a corporation. However, there is such a thing as living in wormhole space as a nomad, and there are a couple of different ways to do that. The first would be to live out of an Orca. So the Orca is a massive ship, at least in terms of how much it can hold. It has a ship maintenance bay. It has a fleet hangar. It has generous cargo space, which can be enhanced with expanded cargo holders. Um, it just holds a crap ton of stuff, right? And that makes it perfect for doing a few things. Like you could, in theory, and people have done this, you could fit it up such that you can fit ships in it and bring those ships with you into wormhole space and basically use the Orca as like an RV, right? Recreational vehicle, right? And so the thing about it is that it is a very high risk activity. If you lose the Orca, that's it. You're done, right? There's not much you can do if you lose the Orca. On the other hand, you can make a lot of money doing this, right? If you can run sites, if you can live out of wormholes and just you know, stay on the move and do your own thing, it is a liberating experience. It's a very unique way of playing the game. But you do always have to be moving. You can't stay in one system for too long because people will catch up to you, right? People will figure out that you're in that system, they will start making bookmarks and pinging around to figure out where you are. Um, and they will find out where you're logging off each day if you stay in the system too long. Now, what kinds of ships do you need? Well, you need a scanner. Okay, you're not going to get very far in wormhole space without a scanner. You need a ship for crabbing, right? If you want to run sites, you need something to run those sites with. Um, Probably not going to fit a battleship, so keep that in mind, right? Not going to fit your crabbing Varger in there, or your favorite paladin, right? So keep that in mind. You might also want a ship for mining and huffing, right? Um, Average frontiers have a massive chunk of gneiss, which is very valuable. And I should mention the Orca has a mining hold, and you can compress gas. You can compress gas and ore using an Orca. So profit. Okay. Um, so you need those ships, right? Those are what you generally what you're going to want to bring. If you can fit it, you might want something for PvP, right? Because the Orca is a pretty powerful ship, but in terms of PvP, it's mm, the Battle Orca is kind of a meme. At one point in time, it was actually pretty strong, but it's mostly a meme. And so I would not recommend trying to do PvP with an Orca. Um, One place that you might have really good success in is a shattered system. Shattered systems are unique in that they cannot have anchored structures. So you're not going to find anyone living in a shattered system except in the same way that you might live in a shattered system, which is logging off in that system. But again, as I said, always be moving. Shattered systems are known for their many connections, and so there is a good chance that you will be connected to someone who may want to blow you up. Now, if the Orca life sounds a little too spicy or a little too pricey for you, you also have the option of joining the Worm Life Alliance Free Ports. These are systems in wormhole space that are owned by the Worm Life Alliance, and they are accessible to all. You can dock at their structures, use the facilities that are in those structures, and just basically live out of there without belonging to a corporation. And you could move between systems, right? So, you get bored of one system, you decide you want to move to another and try that out, just see what it's like. Maybe you like rotate between all the different systems in the Worm Life Alliance. Um, but these are free ports that are accessible to you. And um, if you want to get access to these systems, you can request a an entrance, right? Like in the Matrix, uh, you can request an entrance through their Discord. I will say that there is no PvP allowed in Freeport systems. So that doesn't mean that PvP doesn't happen, but if you are living in their systems and you engage in PvP in the system, um, you are essentially signaling that you are not a trustworthy person. Um, you can obviously defend yourself if you get ganked, but they don't want you starting fights with people or baiting people into fights. PvP is kind of a no-go, and if you break that rule on a regular basis, you may lose your docking access to their structures. So keep that in mind. If you want to engage in PvP, all they ask is that you take it outside that system. So just go into the static or something, you know? If you are an active member of the community and you show that you can be trusted, You may have the opportunity to join the militia, which is tasked with defending their structures and general sort of defense of the Worm Life Alliance Free Ports. So if that's something that interests you, um, do keep that in mind. And lastly, and this is kind of there's a big asterisk on this one. There's also Thera. Now, Thera is a unique wormhole system, right? I'm assuming that most of you know what Thera is already, but one of the things about Thera is that it has NPC stations, which you can actually set as your home station. The benefit of it is that you can't be evicted. In wormhole space, anyone can be evicted, but Thera is kind of the exception. In a lot of ways, Thera breaks all the rules of wormhole space while still being a wormhole. It's wild. Um, the benefit of it is that you're always going to be connected to something, so there's always something to do. You are going to have neighbors, and they might take exception to you being a bad neighbor yourself. That said, a lot of your neighbors will be down to fight, right? So if that's a thing that excites you, like this might be an option for you. Um, it's also the home of Signal Cartel and Eve Scout, right? Those are kind of the same thing, but like, you know, Signal Cartel has a couple different staging systems, and one of them is Thera, right? Because they do map all of Thera. They map all the connections to get to keep their website updated on what's connected to what. They manage a website that tracks all connections to Thera and all the connections to Turner. So um, you'll always be able to know what's connected and where it goes, which is super handy. But as I said, my primary focus is on uh, living in wormhole space as a part of a corp. Now, I have tailored some of the examples and things like that towards Eve University. So if some of these images don't line up with what you're accustomed to in wormhole space, it's probably because what I'm thinking of when I talk about living in wormhole space is living in a C4. Um, my main lives in a C5, so I have that experience, but we're focusing more in on what is relevant to Eve University, and what you need to know. So, when you join a wormhole corp, there are a few things you need to bring, but the most important is going to be your scanning ship, right? Because you can do a whole lot with a scanning ship, not just for yourself, but for the corp. Scanning out as a member of a corporation is how you get content, it's how you find case based connections. It's generally just how you be a part of a corp. So, your scannership is the most important thing. The next thing you might want to bring in is doctrine ships. Now, this is something that is probably not going to be expected of you on day one, but if you can, it is so helpful to have your doctrine ships from the beginning. So if you can bring in your doctrine ships, that's awesome. You might also want to bring in ships to make money, right? So that might be mining ships, that might be crabbing ships, right? Um, Whatever you bring in, keep in mind that you don't want to bring a whole lot of crap. Um, Bringing a whole lot of crap with you is kind of like, why, right? It's already a bad idea to have too many assets in a wormhole system, even if it is your home hole. Um, but bringing a whole bunch of crap from wherever you're coming from to the wormhole that you're now going to live out of is just generally a bad idea. Bring what you need, and what you need is a scanner, you need your doctrine ships, and you need a way to make money. Now, in wormhole space, it is essential that you be self sufficient. And what that looks like is going to depend on what kind of wormhole corporation you're in, right? But having a scanner ship and being able to scan out, right? Being able to scan up the chain, being willing to scan out the chain is super important. Some corporations are going to expect you to haul your own stuff in and out of the wormhole, right? Some corporations are going to ask you to participate um, in logistics for the corp, right? They might give you a little incentive to do so, maybe a little ISK on a courier contract, right? But generally, self-sufficiency is a big part of wormhole space, right? And that does not mean that you have to do everything on your own, right? Part of contributing to the shared communal experience is being able to take care of certain things on your own, being able to do certain things on your own, so that when the corp has some sort of thing that they want to do as a corp, whether it's an op, whether it's a brawl, or maybe training of some sort, that everybody has what they need to participate. And so that means being able to scan, maybe it means being able to haul. Now in Eve University with WHC, you are not expected to have your own hauler, right? So whether you do it on your main or your alt, it is super useful to have your own DST pilot, but it is not required, right? So just be aware of that. Now, as you are probably familiar with, there is no asset safety in wormhole space. I've been kind of hinting at the importance of keeping in mind how much stuff you have in home hull. Obviously, you're going to have stuff, right? You're going to have your doctrine ships. You're going to have your your scanning ships. You might have a few ships that you just like flying around. That's fine. But keep in mind that everything that you have in the wormhole is stuff that can be lost, right? Within just a few days, you could lose it all. And there's nothing really to prevent that in terms of game mechanics, except for what you as players, as a corporation, are capable of doing. So, here's what I recommend. Train up a suitcase alt. Now, this could be an Orca pilot, it could be a freighter pilot, um, and that pilot doesn't need to be Omega 100% of the time. It could be a pilot that you Omega for 1 month to train into the freighter or train into the Orca, and then you just let the Omega lapse, and from there you only log it in, only Omega the account when you need it, right? Okay. Now, there are instructions on the Eve University wiki page about setting up a suitcasing Orca. Um, it's called creating an Orca pilot alt. Um, I recently rewrote that page, like within the last couple months, so it should be mostly up to date. Um, so that's a resource for you if you're curious about how to set up a suitcasing alt. It should go without saying, but I cannot stress this enough because some people do not understand this. Um, PvP is a central part of wormhole space. Now, I know at Eve University we're big on let people do what they want, let them experiment. If they make mistakes, that's a learning opportunity, right? I'm generally down for that, right? But if you sign up to live in wormhole space, you should be aware that you are signing up for PvP as a way of life. Um, be prepared to fight. If you're not prepared to fight, you will lose your stuff. Um, if you don't fight, even if you lose, losing is fine, right? I mean, it's not very fun, but losing is not an indicator of um, not being a good member of Wormhole Space. Fighting is Wormhole Space life, right? You fight to live, live to fight, right? Um, if you don't, you are an eviction target. You look weak. You are a drain on the wormhole community as a whole. And so you look like a juicy target for wormhole evictions. And there are plenty of groups that will evict you just because you look weak and you don't contribute to wormhole space. So please be prepared for that. If you're not prepared for that, what I highly recommend is that instead of living in wormhole space, you wormhole dive, or you live the nomadic life. Um, but if you're going to join a wormhole corp and all you want to do is crab, you're in the wrong place, friend. Now, it is absolutely vital that you understand how to roll because rolling is done defensively, offensively, and to get new content. Now, this is a what is sometimes referred to as an overly complicated um, rolling chart, and it is complicated. And the reason why it's complicated is because it accounts for every possible contingency when it comes to rolling two bill wormholes. Two bill wormholes are the favored static for WHC. This was true in Innuendo, and it's true in the new home. Tentatively, I'm calling it Elysium because that is one of the highest voted names for it. I don't think that's been official yet, but you know. So this chart accounts for every possible contingency, and if you follow it exactly, you will never roll yourself out. That said, it is complicated, and it takes practice getting accustomed to reading this chart. Um, I know a lot of people are annoyed by it because it is so complicated, and there are much uh, easier ways of conceptualizing this that don't account for all the different contingencies, but whatever. The reality is that we're all human, and even if you try to follow the chart exactly, you can still roll yourself out because you made a little mistake. You forgot your prop mod, things like that. All kinds of mistakes happen just because we're human. That's life. Now, there are plenty of other kinds of wormholes that are not two bill. So this is a rolling chart specific to rolling with battleships that covers all the holes that you can roll with a battleship. So we have the 1 bill hole in blue, the 2 bill in green, 3 bill in yellow, and in orange we have the 3.3 bill hole. Um, and so this is what I would refer people to if they want to know how to roll certain holes um, using battleships. And this covers all the different types of, it gives you the wormhole signature types, right? So you can know which one to use for that hole. Now, I've alluded to evictions. I've mentioned what one of the contributing factors to evictions. Evictions are also a part of wormhole space, a big part of it, in fact. Um, because there is no asset safety, there is a huge incentive to blow up structures if you can. Structures, when they die in wormhole space, they drop everything as containers in space, which means that um, wormholes are giant loot pinatas, right? Um, and it is important to keep in mind that even if an eviction is done for content, it is a political action to evict someone. Um, and the political impact of an eviction may be very small, right? You evict a nobody corp that nobody really knows about or cares about. All they ever do is PI. Nobody cares, right? But it is a political act. And so it's very important to keep in mind that if you are going to participate in an eviction, you are participating in the politics of wormhole space. This is why Eve University is so strict on the whole don't shoot structures, um, because every act of shooting structures is a political act and will have ramifications for the corp. Um, so be aware of that. Also, be aware that when evictions pop off, there's a good chance that there will be other corporations that are expected to um, join in. There will be plenty of people just looking to third party. There will be people looking to seagull, right? Which just refers to like seagulls hanging out on a beach and snatching up fish that fishers pick up. Um, be aware that that is going to happen during an eviction. People will be trying to join either on the defenders or the attackers side just to get in on it. It's content. I personally don't think evictions are very fun, um, but the loot can be worth it. So, you know, some people do it. Um, Also, be aware that there are two kinds of evictions, or two main types of evictions, right? And the first is a content eviction, right? Where there's a big fleet, but they're not really doing serious hull control. And this is because what they really want is a big fight. So they're trying to bait out that fight by reffing your structures and forcing you to um, take them seriously because otherwise they will lose their structures. That's the theory behind content evictions. The other type of eviction is a serious eviction, where they bring in a huge fleet. They might anchor a POS or an Astrahus, um, and they start running strict hull control. A content eviction can turn into a serious eviction. Um, Sometimes people will do a content eviction, see that you're not going to fight, and get pissed off about it and decide, well, screw it. We've already refed every structure in this wormhole. Um, we're just going to hang out for a few days, and now we're actually going to run hull control. So it is a good idea to treat content evictions like serious evictions. Don't play around with them, specifically because it can turn into a serious eviction. Um, but you might notice that there is a difference between the two. And when you see that difference, that's an opportunity to bring more friends in if it's not a serious eviction. Now, hold control can be done offensively and defensively. Hold control is maintaining control over the wormholes. Um, in With a two-bill hull, you're going to be doing this with a battleship, right? So the strategy is to doorstop, right? This is when you crit the wormhole and have a battleship on the outside so that you can um, close the wormhole, cause it to collapse when you come back in. This makes it difficult for a fleet to get in, um, because one, there's not a whole lot of mass, and two, you're right there ready to close the wormhole if you see them on D-scan. Now, I will say that in the defense of innuendo, right? At the fall of Innuendo, um, we were able to get into the C3 static, and we were able to get shuttles in through the crit hole before they closed it, right? So it's not perfect, right? Hull control is difficult to maintain, especially when you have to maintain it 24/7 with, um, folks being time zone locked and people have work and real life obligations that mean that they can't just sit in front of their computer for 4 days while these timers go run out. So, hull control is very difficult to maintain and it is not perfect. Now, hull control keeps hostile fleets out. It's also a way to make sure that only friends get in. It can allow you to evac assets, right? So if you have hull control if you manage to take hull control even temporarily, um, you can get valuable assets out during an eviction. Um, so being evicted and having hull control, um, you may not be able to get the evictors out, right? But at least you can exfil a bunch of valuable stuff. Now, if you need to contest, one strategy is to basically try to um, roll out the rollers. So this could be yeeting a battleship through a crit hole, knowing that their ship is on the outside, and now they rolled themselves out, right? But that also means that you're going to roll one of your own out. An easier way of doing this would be to mess with the mass using yachts. Um, the yacht, this big ugly thing, is a cruiser, and it gets bonuses to the nullifier cycle time. It can also fit a Kovop's cloak. This makes it almost impossible to catch. Um, your yacht should be fit with a 100 MN afterburner, a Kovop's cloak, and a nullifier. Do not ever put a burst jammer or a Higgs rig on your yacht. If you do that, you're going to make the nullifier useless, because the burst jammer and the Higgs rigs make a nullifier not work. Don't ask me why, but that's the game mechanics. Um, anyone can fly a yacht. Um, it only requires Spaceship Command 1. However, in order to use the Kovop's cloak, you will need cloaking 4, which means it's not super accessible to alpha clones. So keep that keep that in mind, right? Your alpha tunes are, if you've got like a bunch of alpha tunes just, you know, as throwaways, um, use those for like battleships, right? Yeet a battleship through the wormhole. Um, but for the yachts, you need an Omega clone. Now, I'm not going to get too in depth on home defense, but I did want to mention like what is home defense, right? So home defense is a doctrine for defending your home whole, right? This is your home system, and generally it's going to be a doctrine that plays to the strengths of the corp, right? This could be based on the wormhole effect of your home system. It could be based on the type of fights that you get in, right? If you're a nano gang in a C2 null 5, your home defense might be playing heavily on nano, right? Um, Ideally, you don't undock the home defense doctrine for anything other than home defense. And when you do undock it, you might modify it in order to avoid predictability. When you are calling for home defense, this is the time to call in friends. This is the time to call in your friends' friends and friends of friends of friends. Basically, you're going to bat phone everyone because the opposition might be calling for friends as well. You must have whole control in order to get people in. If you don't have whole control, it is almost impossible to get people in. And I know this from experience during the fall of Inu. I spent many hours trying to get people into Inu, and it was very, very hard. Now, frig holes can be a viable entrance if hole control is not possible, but frig holes are random. Um, so it's an option, but you have to know that the frig hole is there. You have to know where it leads, and it's only going to last for 6 hours. Most of them are only going to last for 6 hours, so be aware of that. And as I said, if you have questions, please leave them as a comment to this video. I will try to get to as many as I can. Can't promise to do them all, but I will do my best. Um, and if you like this video, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, share with friends who might want to learn more about what it's like living in wormhole space. It's definitely my preferred playstyle, but I know it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Um, Otherwise, I wish you all the best and fly dangerously, my friends.